The year is 2130, and the scene unfolds in Seoul at construction zone number 12, within the headquarters of the notorious Samjeori gang. The entire area is littered with bodies, a grim testament to the carnage that has taken place. Suddenly, a powerful explosion rips through the air, and from within the smoke and debris, a lone figure emerges, gripping a gun tightly. Without hesitation, the remaining gang members open fire on the figure, but their bullets have no effect. Unfazed, the man raises his weapon and retaliates, unleashing a barrage of gunfire. Chaos erupts as more gang members attempt to surround him from behind, but he swiftly turns and fires, cutting them down in an instant. Within moments, every last enemy lies dead, their futile resistance crushed. Amidst the bloodshed, one man remains alive. Trembling with fear, he demands to know the intruder's identity. The man steps forward but remains silent, his expression cold and unreadable. Panic-stricken, the survivor pleads for an explanation, insisting that they had sought a peaceful resolution. Desperation takes hold as he raises his pistol and demands an answer. In a flash, the man eliminates him with a single, precise shot. As the body collapses, the truth is revealed. This ruthless operative is an agent of the world government law enforcement, known only by the code name Alpha. With unwavering conviction, Alpha states that as long as a single criminal remains, true peace will never exist in the world. Without delay, he contacts his superiors, informing them that the mission has been executed as planned. Gangbuk is now under the absolute control of the world government. The scene shifts to the year 2030, a time when the world is engulfed in nuclear war. Fear grips humanity as the unimaginable catastrophe unfolds overnight. Doomsday. Civilization teeters on the brink of collapse, yet humanity's resilience shines through. As time passes, survivors who had taken refuge underground begin to resurface. However, the world awaiting them is no longer one of order. It is a lawless wasteland ruled by violence and savagery. Amidst the chaos, a desperate father struggles to save his injured daughter, Kiha. Pain racks her body, and she groans in agony as he frantically searches for a way to stop the bleeding. Before he can act, voices echo from outside. Soldiers are combing the ruins, hunting for any survivors in hiding. Their cold, calculated orders cut through the silence. They couldn't have gone far. Release the gas. Spread it everywhere. If they're there, they'll come running out. Without hesitation, the soldiers deploy poison gas, filling the air with a deadly mist. One of the gas canisters lands dangerously close to the father and daughter. Panic sets in as he scrambles through his bag, pulling out a single mask. Urgently, he tells Kiha to hold on and avoid taking deep breaths. But she refuses to wear it. Weakly, she insists that there is only one mask left, and her father should take it instead. Shock and desperation fill his voice as he questions her decision, unable to accept it. Kiha, however, has already made her choice. She knows she won't survive. With trembling hands, she places the mask over her father's face, her voice barely above a whisper, until the world is no longer a living hell until peace returns. As her words fade, the poison gas spreads completely, swallowing everything in its path. The scene shifts to Seoul, Korea, where the world government's regional administrator is traveling in his car. Frustration fills his voice as he questions the government's decision. Building a dome in a place like this, a hopeless city still scarred by war, overrun by underground organizations, seems absurd. He knows these factions won't simply stand by and watch their profits disappear. An incident is inevitable. With growing concern, he orders the driver to return to the consulate immediately. Just then, the driver glances out the window and notices a bus approaching. Through its windows, several armed terrorists reveal their guns, aiming directly at them. Fear grips him, but before he can react, it's too late. A hail of gunfire erupts from the bus, tearing through the car. The force of the attack causes the vehicle to spin out of control, crashing violently into a streetlight pole. As the bus speeds away, leaving destruction in its wake, the aftermath becomes clear. The administrator and his driver lie motionless, their lives brutally ended in an instant. In the next scene, a young woman introduces herself to a director. With a wry tone, she states that her name is Amber and that she is currently experiencing a demotion in real time. She then hesitates for a moment before asking if she heard correctly. Was her first assignment really in Seoul? The director confirms it without hesitation. There has been a problem with the construction of Dome number 12 in Seoul. The previous officer handling the project met with an unfortunate accident, so she will be stepping in as their replacement. Amber's expression shifts to one of surprise. She recalls that Dome number 11 in Tokyo was only recently completed. Why, then, is it necessary to construct another dome in Seoul? The director calmly explains the situation. Though 100 years have passed since the war, the Korean peninsula still suffers from radiation exposure and the dominance of ruthless criminal organizations. The dome serves as a safe zone, shielding humanity from these threats. Just like Tokyo, Seoul desperately needs one as well. However, the city's underground syndicates are resisting fiercely, unwilling to let go of their control. Clearing out this corruption and ensuring that Seoul becomes a safe and lawful city, that is her duty as the new administrator. But she need not worry. She will have an expert to assist her. Amber raises an eyebrow at the mention of an expert. Before she can ask further, a figure steps into the room. The moment he appears, his presence commands attention. It is none other than the same man seen at the very beginning, the executor Alpha. Approaching with a composed demeanor, he simply states that he has just returned from Tokyo. Amber's gaze lingers on Alpha, her expression filled with curiosity and unease. Information about him immediately follows. The strongest military force of the world government, a man known for handling the most dangerous missions. His presence alone makes it clear that the situation is far from ordinary. The director, unfazed by the tension, acknowledges Alpha's timely arrival and informs them that they will now be working together as a team. Amber processes the information, realizing that this is the expert she had been told about. A sense of disbelief crosses her face as she assesses the man standing before her. Alpha remains composed, neither confirming nor denying the title of expert, but admitting to being a specialist in the field. With a calm demeanor, he extends his hand toward Amber for a handshake. She reciprocates, introducing herself as their partnership is officially established. With formalities out of the way, the director moves to the next order of business. The two of them are set to board a private jet the next morning and head straight to Seoul. The sudden urgency of the mission unsettles Amber, but there is no room for hesitation. The situation demands immediate action. The director makes it clear, this mission holds the highest priority, and success is the only acceptable outcome. The scene shifts to the Gangcheol Corporation, formerly known as the Gangcheol Gang, one of the dominant criminal organizations in the Korean peninsula. Inside their headquarters, tension rises as news spreads. A new administrator has already been assigned. The revelation leaves everyone in shock. Among them, one man, wearing a confident smile, assures the group that the information is solid. The administrator is set to arrive the next day via Gimpo Airport. Their team leader, taking in the report, acknowledges the accuracy of his intelligence in the past and questions whether it can be trusted this time as well. Without hesitation, the man affirms his confidence. Frustration flares in the team leader's eyes. It hasn't been long since they eliminated the previous administrator, yet another one is already on their way. Clearly, the message they had sent last time was not strong enough. His subordinate agrees without question. After a moment of calm, the leader's voice lowers as he acknowledges the previous operation's success, perhaps a bit too extravagant but effective nonetheless. What they need now is another clear message. The man nods, his confidence unwavering. This is his chance. The boss trusts him, and he intends to use this opportunity to rise even further. His gaze briefly shifts to Park Cheol, another high-ranking member. A silent rivalry brews within his mind. It's only a matter of time before he takes Park Cheol's place. Though the man remains composed, he could never have anticipated what was coming. Without hesitation, he turns to one of the men standing behind him and issues a command. The girl must be prepared. They will need her ability once again. The flight takes off, carrying Amber and Alpha toward their destination. Inside the cabin, an unsettling silence lingers between them. Amber glances at Alpha, wondering what could be going through his mind. He hasn't spoken a single word the entire way. Turning her attention to the window, she observes the vast cityscape outside. Seoul, her first glimpse of the lawless city she had only heard about. Alpha finally breaks the silence, his voice calm yet distant. This wasn't always how Seoul looked. Once it had been a vibrant, beautiful city before the war stripped everything away. Amber listens, feeling a strange sense of nostalgia in his words. 100 years had passed since then, so of course, it must have been different back then. But something about the way Alpha spoke unsettles her. It almost sounds like he had seen it himself. She turns toward him, her curiosity growing. Had he? Alpha shifts his gaze away, offering no further explanation. His cryptic response irritates her, but before she can dwell on it further, the flight begins its descent. The plane lands smoothly on the runway, marking the beginning of her first deployment. A mission in Seoul, the lawless city. Meanwhile, deep within Gangcheol Gang's ranks, a member alerts his allies. The targets have arrived as expected. Entering runway A, the operation must proceed as planned. Another gang member, after confirming the report, sets his phone down. With a sharp tone, he orders the girl beside him to begin scanning the area. She steps forward, her eyes glowing as she activates her magic power. An invisible force spreads outward, sweeping through the surroundings, probing for their targets. Her search quickly reveals two figures inside the plane. A young woman accompanied by a man wearing a gas mask. The unexpected discovery catches them off guard. This was not part of their intelligence. Confusion spreads as one of them questions their next move. Their leader hesitates, clearly unsettled. If they were to retreat now, their boss would not take it lightly. The trust he had only just earned would be at risk. Pushing aside his doubts, he makes his decision. The plan must continue, no matter what. Inside the plane, Amber glances around with growing impatience. It has been a while since they landed, yet there is no sign of the crew. Turning to Alpha, she voices her concern. Alpha responds casually, making a remark about the poor flight service. His tone remains indifferent, but his eyes remain sharp. As he speaks, his attention shifts to the window. Outside, something unusual catches his eye, a truck, loaded with explosives, speeding directly toward the plane. His expression hardens instantly. Without hesitation, he issues a sharp command to Amber, ordering her to get down. Amber, caught off guard, doesn't immediately understand the urgency. But as she turns her gaze behind Alpha, her breath catches in her throat. The truck is coming straight for them, its deadly cargo ready to ignite on impact. Before she can react, the inevitable happens. The truck slams into the aircraft, triggering a massive explosion. A deafening blast erupts, engulfing everything in flames. Amber's past unfolds, revealing the struggles that shaped her. Born into poverty, she grew up in a world still reeling from the devastation of the Great War. The conflict had left countless people in hardship, with the world government working tirelessly to restore order to an unstable world. One day, a government recruitment poster caught her attention, sparking a realization. Becoming a government official was the only way to escape poverty. The path, however, was anything but easy. The relentless studying, the crushing pressure. It took 5 attempts before she finally passed the entrance exam. Yet despite her qualifications, the absence of connections and an unclear background made others view her with suspicion and disregard. Even so, she refused to give up. She worked harder than anyone else, determined to climb higher. After everything she had endured, she believed her efforts would one day pay off. The scene abruptly shifts back to the present. The truck crashes into the plane, unleashing a massive explosion. Amidst the wreckage, Amber remains alive, barely managing to lift herself up. Confusion grips her mind as she struggles to process what just happened. Her gaze shifts and her breath catches. Alpha lies nearby, injured and unmoving. A realization dawns upon her. Did he shield her from the blast? Panic sets in as she tries to comprehend the situation. Suddenly, voices echo from outside. The terrorists have surrounded the crash site. Their orders are clear. If she is alive, they are to capture her. If not, they must confirm the kill. Amber glances through the shattered plane window, spotting the armed men waiting outside. Fear creeps into her mind. These must be the lawless organizations of Seoul the director had warned her about. Doubts begin to form. Her predecessor's death wasn't an accident. These criminals had moved immediately the moment she arrived. Her eyes dart to the floor where she notices Alpha's gun lying nearby. Hesitating for only a moment, she picks it up. A grim thought settles in. She was nothing more than a disposable pawn. No connections, no backing. Her survival had never mattered. Was this truly the outcome of all her struggles? As despair takes hold, a voice cuts through her thoughts. No. Startled, Amber turns to see Alpha, barely conscious but still alive. His eyes meet hers as he struggles to sit up. He dismisses her doubts, stating that such thinking is exactly why she remains stuck at the bottom. Shock fills Amber's face as she questions how he is even alive. Alpha gives no direct answer, instead pulling out a shrapnel fragment embedded in his abdomen, a remnant from the explosion. Despite his injuries, his voice remains steady. The director, he explains, may be harsh, but he is not someone who abandons his subordinates. Amber stares at him in disbelief. Who exactly was this man? Ignoring her reaction, Alpha shifts his focus to a briefcase resting nearby and orders Amber to bring it to him. As she complies, he opens it, revealing an array of firearms inside. Without hesitation, he retrieves a gun, turning toward her. Amber's earlier question lingers in the air. Who was he? Alpha finally provides an answer. He is the world government's first executor, Alpha. If she were truly a pawn meant to be discarded, he would have never been sent to assist her. Trusting herself is the only way forward. She must prove her worth. The terrorists begin infiltrating the wreckage, cautiously moving through the damaged aircraft. Their eyes scan the surroundings, searching for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a grenade rolls onto the floor right in front of them. Panic sets in as they freeze, staring at the explosive. Before any of them can react, the grenade detonates, engulfing the area in a blinding explosion. Amidst the smoke and chaos, a figure emerges, the unmistakable presence of Alpha. Moving through the flames like an unstoppable force, he confronts the terrorists, mocking their attempt to act like special forces. The moment they see him, their instincts take over. Weapons are raised, and a barrage of bullets is unleashed in his direction. But Alpha moves with impossible speed, leaping into the air and striking one of them down with a powerful kick. Before the others can recover, he ducks low, retaliating with precise gunfire, cutting them down one by one. A stray bullet finds its mark, striking Alpha directly in the head. The impact should have been fatal, yet he remains standing. Slowly turning toward the attacker, his eyes burn with an intense glare. The sight sends a wave of terror through the remaining enemies. With a calm yet menacing tone, he acknowledges the hit. It stung, but nothing more. The terrorist, barely holding his weapon steady, makes a desperate attempt to fire again. But before he can pull the trigger, Alpha closes the distance in an instant, delivering a crushing punch to his face. As the enemy collapses, Alpha mutters that he is nothing short of a monster and should at least leave one of them alive. Unbeknownst to him, another terrorist lurks nearby, hidden in the shadows. Watching the massacre unfold, he realizes their only chance lies in overwhelming force. With silent precision, he shoulders a rocket launcher, carefully taking aim at Alpha. Just as he steadies his shot and prepares to fire, a single gunshot rings through the air. The terrorist's body stiffens before collapsing lifelessly to the ground, a bullet lodged directly in his skull. The shooter is revealed, Amber, standing with her weapon raised. Her eyes remain locked onto Alpha, a mixture of awe and disbelief filling her thoughts. What she just witnessed was beyond comprehension. Taking down so many enemies alone and that bullet to the head, was he even human? Could he be immortal? Alpha turns his gaze toward Amber, his tone carrying a hint of amusement. Only moments ago, she had been overwhelmed with fear, yet now she stood her ground and fired with precision. Acknowledging her effort, he remarks that she managed to hold her own. Amber, feeling slightly embarrassed, quickly dismisses his words, insisting that she had never been crying in the first place. Ignoring her reaction, Alpha shifts focus back to the situation. The ambush had been too precise, executed with knowledge only an insider could have provided. This was more than just a simple attack. There were people working from the shadows, feeding their enemies valuable information. With a grim realization, he acknowledges that rough days lie ahead. Meanwhile, in another location, the mastermind behind the failed ambush receives the report. Rage boils within him as he learns that their operation has ended in disaster. His bodyguard informs him that the man wearing the gas mask was responsible for wiping out the entire strike team. His fury intensifies as he questions whether Cheol-Yung had known about this mysterious fighter and deliberately withheld that information. The thought of betrayal only fuels his anger further. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he issues new orders. They will pull back for now, but an investigation must begin immediately. He wants to know exactly who this gas mask-wearing fighter is, and once they have their answer, they will gather their best men to eliminate him. Elsewhere, another figure steps into focus. His phone rings, and without hesitation, he answers. The battlefield around him is littered with bodies, evidence of a one-sided massacre. Casual and unbothered, he reports that the Bukgu gang's rebellion has been dealt with. There was nothing impressive about it, and frankly, the entire ordeal had been dull. His expression shifts slightly as new orders come through the phone. A new target has been assigned. A hint of excitement flickers in his eyes as he acknowledges the command. Without delay, he sets off, ready to engage. Ending the call, he turns toward his men standing behind him. A smirk crosses his face as he informs them that fresh prey awaits, someone rumored to be quite strong. One of his subordinates, intrigued by the idea, leans forward. It had been a long time since anything entertaining had come their way. Amber and Alpha approach the fallen man, observing that he is still alive despite the impact. Alpha remarks that he had only struck him once but failed to control his strength. The sudden insult of being called a monster had annoyed him, leading to a stronger attack than intended. Amber, in her mind, acknowledges that Alpha does indeed seem like a monster. Before they can dwell on it further, airport police begin to arrive. The officers approach them, inquiring if they are unharmed. Among them, an inspector steps forward, introducing himself as Yoon Jong-hoo, the on-site commander. Amber, unimpressed, criticizes their delayed response, stating that such inefficiency warrants an internal audit. The inspector, taken aback, apologizes and assures them that the terrorist will be taken into custody. However, Alpha interrupts, asserting that he will handle the interrogation personally. The inspector, surprised, hesitates before questioning this decision. Alpha firmly reminds him that it falls within an executor's authority, leaving no room for objections. The inspector, visibly nervous, complies and states that they will escort both of them to headquarters. As they prepare to leave, Alpha warns Amber to stay alert. She looks at him, confused by his sudden caution. Sensing something unusual, Alpha mutters that there is a stench of suspicion lingering in the air. After the devastating nuclear war that nearly brought the world to ruin, most government institutions collapsed and ceased to function. However, in certain regions, police forces were revived out of sheer necessity, with Seoul being one of them. Despite these efforts, the hastily assembled force struggled to maintain order, proving insufficient against the rise of criminal organizations that quickly took control. In response, the world government began supporting the Seoul police in an attempt to restore stability. Inside the Seoul police headquarters, Alpha takes charge of the interrogation. He stands before the captured criminal, demanding answers. He questions whether the attack on the administrator was a deliberate attempt to target the world government, insisting that the mastermind behind it all be revealed. The criminal, however, remains defiant. With a smirk, he mocks Alpha, refusing to betray his organization. He warns Alpha that he has stepped into the wrong part of hell and that underestimating this land would be a mistake. At that moment, Inspector Yoon steps forward, declaring that the police will take over the interrogation and that Alpha should leave. But Alpha, unbothered by the interruption, suggests an alternative approach. If this prisoner refuses to talk, perhaps the interrogation target should be changed. The inspector, confused by Alpha's words, fails to react in time. In an instant, Alpha grabs him by the face and slams his head onto the table. Shocked and struggling against the force, the inspector protests, accusing Alpha of abusing his power. Without hesitation, Alpha silences him with a deadly glare. His voice turns cold as he warns that speaking without permission will cost him his life. Before the situation escalates further, another officer reaches for his gun, ready to intervene. But before he can act, Amber presses her pistol against him, calmly advising him to make a wise decision. The officer freezes, realizing the danger of provoking them. Alpha then turns his focus back to the inspector, calling him out for his betrayal. He accuses the so-called public servant of colluding with criminals, shamming him for selling out his duty for petty cash. A precisely timed attack of this scale could not have been possible without an insider leaking information, and the delayed police response only confirmed his suspicions. However, despite his disgust, Alpha offers the inspector a final chance at redemption. Reveal the mastermind behind the attack, and his actions will be considered a one-time mistake. The inspector, trembling with fear, remains silent. Growing impatient, Alpha presses his head harder against the table, his anger intensifying. The pressure becomes unbearable, and the inspector, unable to endure any longer, finally agrees to talk. Before he can say anything, the captured criminal erupts in fury, cursing the inspector for betraying them. But before he can utter another word, Alpha delivers a brutal punch to his face, silencing him instantly. With an icy tone, he asks what should be done with him. Realizing there is no escape, the criminal, now broken, also agrees to reveal everything. After completing the interrogation, Alpha and Amber prepare to leave the headquarters. As they walk, Amber questions whether this is how executors always operate. Alpha remains silent, lost in thought about the information revealed by the inspector regarding Gangchial Corporation. Operating under the facade of a legitimate business, its true influence is massive. The police, rather than stopping them, seem to be enabling their control. As long as they exist, public authority in Seoul will never be restored. Hearing this, Amber reacts with disbelief. Despite the overwhelming evidence linking them to the attack, nothing can be done against them. The situation makes no sense to her. Alpha explains that after the war, Gangchial Corporation seized control of the lawless zones, claiming the land as their own. Now, every part of the city is enemy territory. Society itself has been shaped for their benefit, optimized for their exploitation and rule. The thought that such parasites still exist in a world that should be at peace is unbearable. Amber watches Alpha closely, her gaze lingering on him. Sensing this, Alpha questions her reaction. She hesitates before admitting that she simply didn't expect him to think that way. She confesses that she has been trapped in self-pity all this time. Alpha dismisses her concerns as foolishness. He reminds her that she was chosen for this assignment for a reason. The director never makes mistakes. Doubting herself now is not an option. The enemy will strike again to compensate for their failure, and surviving that attack should be their immediate priority. Amber, still uncertain, voices her worries. With the police compromised, she questions whether they even stand a chance. Alpha reassures her with confidence. That's exactly why he is here. Amber, still processing his words, looks at him strangely before acknowledging his resolve with a simple response. Understood. Inside Gangchial Corporation, the atmosphere is tense as the Elite Five of Team 3 gather in one place. The man responsible for orchestrating the earlier attack steps forward, confirming that everyone has arrived. One of the members questions whether the situation is truly serious enough to warrant calling all of them together. The response is immediate. This time, things are different. Based on gathered intelligence, there is a high probability that the target is an executor. The revelation shocks the group. A young woman among them, unfamiliar with the term, asks what an executor is. Her curiosity is met with frustration as another member comments that she shouldn't have been brought along in the first place. Meanwhile, another individual shifts the discussion to the world government's intentions. He reveals that they are planning to construct a dome in this region. The implications are clear. Once construction begins, no organizations will be allowed to remain in the zone. This isn't just about their current situation. It concerns the future of the entire Gangchial faction. Frustration turns to determination as the man stresses that no matter what, both the administrator and the executor must be eliminated. Another member, amused by the challenge, agrees. Allowing an executor to roam freely in their territory is not an option. He orders their men to be deployed, ensuring all possible routes near the government office are identified. It has been a long time since they engaged in a high-profile hunt, and they intend to handle this one properly. Unbeknownst to them, a woman skilled in magic silently listens from the shadows, carefully observing their every word. Inside the World Government Office residence in the Seoul region, Alpha and Amber are engaged in a video call with the director. After listening to their full report, the director acknowledges the situation. With an informant involved and a meticulously planned attack, it is clear that the world government must consider raising its level of response. The unexpected nature of the mission has made things far more difficult than anticipated. Recognizing this, the director offers Amber an apology. Amber, unimpressed, questions whether the director truly didn't expect this outcome. With a hint of sarcasm, she asks if there is any hazard pay for the added risks. The director, however, avoids the question entirely, merely stating that he will await their next report before abruptly ending the call. Seeing this, Amber appears slightly disappointed. Before she can dwell on it, Alpha turns to her, asking about her next course of action. She explains that for now, gathering information must be the priority. With the police unable to fully control the situation, launching an all-out war is not an option. Alpha agrees, noting that even the informant, Inspector Yoon, had little knowledge of Gangcheol Corporation's true scale or influence. Fortunately, the security of the government office is sufficient, making it a suitable base for collecting intelligence. Amber, however, expresses concern, pointing out that in a way, they have ended up trapped inside. Alpha, unfazed, encourages her to think positively. At daybreak, he plans to find someone who might be willing to cooperate with them. Amber suggests taking a few office agents for support, but Alpha immediately dismisses the idea, stating that they would only slow him down. He intends to move alone. Concerned, Amber asks if he will be all right, reminding him that the enemy might be targeting him. For the first time, Alpha seems slightly amused. He questions whether Amber is genuinely worried about him, remarking that such concern seems unnecessary. Amber simply acknowledges his words, offering no further argument. Satisfied, Alpha nods, as long as she understands that is enough. With that, he prepares to leave, stating that he is heading out. Amber watches as he exits, her thoughts lingering on him. She mutters to herself, nodding that the more she observes Alpha, the stranger he seems. Turning toward the window, she gazes outside, lost in thought. The next day, Alpha moves through the streets with a determined stride, heading toward his destination. Arriving at a particular building, he attempts to enter, only to find the entrance locked. Without hesitation, he raises his fist and strikes the glass panel beside the door. The force shatters it instantly. Reaching through the broken section, he unlocks the gate and prepares to step inside. Before he can move further, a cold sensation presses against the back of his head. A gun. A voice from behind warns him to stay still, threatening to blow his head off if he takes another step. The stranger demands to know whether he is from the Gangcheol faction. In an instant, Alpha reacts. His hand shoots up, grabbing the weapon and crushing it effortlessly within his grip. The sheer strength displayed leaves the other man in shock. Looking at him, Alpha remarks that he has grown slow with age, addressing him as Boss Kim. Kim, still processing what just happened, stares in disbelief. The realization hits, and he mutters in shock, "Alpha." Alpha confirms with a calm nod, stating that it has been a long time. Seated inside, Alpha and Kim share a quiet moment over tea. Alpha breaks the silence, reflecting on the past, 30 years since Kim roamed these lands as a vigilante. He wonders if it has truly been that long. Kim sighs, confirming that time has indeed passed. His aging face and weary body should make it obvious. He admits that he is nothing more than a retired old man now, ready to shut this place down for good. Yet, despite all these years, Alpha remains unchanged, still wearing the same gas mask. Kim questions if it has started to stink by now. Ignoring the remark, Alpha cuts straight to the point. He needs Kim's help. Once known as the ruthless gang hunter of Seoul, Kim was never meant for a peaceful retirement. Kim scoffs at the request, questioning if Alpha is truly desperate enough to seek the aid of an old man. He makes it clear that he no longer participates in gunfights. Alpha reassures him that fighting is not what he needs. What he requires is information, and Kim is more than capable of providing that. Without hesitation, he asks if Kim will cooperate. Kim, sensing the inevitability of the situation, sarcastically asks whether he even has the right to refuse. Alpha confirms that he does not. His question was merely a courtesy. If Kim refuses, Alpha will simply drag him by force. Kim shakes his head, muttering that Alpha is as rude as ever. Realizing there is no way out, he finally gives in, agreeing to help. He then stands, stating that they should move. He has another hideout elsewhere. Before they can leave, a sudden tension fills the air. Both of them sense something outside. Moments later, a hail of bullets shatters the windows, tearing through the house. Instinctively, Alpha and Kim drop low, narrowly avoiding the attack as the gunfire rips the place apart. Crouching behind cover, Kim whispers to Alpha, demanding to know if he had been followed. Alpha, unfazed, simply replies that he hadn't noticed. Outside, the one responsible for the ambush steps forward, Victor. Laughing, he declares that this will be the end for them. Their deaths are inevitable. Victor steps forward, his voice filled with confidence as he declares that the entire area is surrounded. Surrendering now would make things much easier for them. Inside, Kim clenches his fists in frustration. The Gangcheol faction has gone so far as to hire skilled foreign mercenaries. The realization fuels his anger. Without wasting time, Alpha turns to Kim, asking if he has a secret passage they can use. Kim, slightly amused, notes that Alpha still remembers. Without further delay, he signals Alpha to follow him. Meanwhile, Victor waits outside, growing impatient. The silence from within makes him question whether they might already be dead. Deciding to confirm, he cautiously steps inside, only to be met with an empty space. His eyes widen in shock. Quickly pulling out his communicator, he informs his teammate that an escape route was used. The response is immediate. His partner erupts in frustration, ordering him to chase them down. Victor's teammate, however, realizes something more troubling. There is no way a newly deployed executor in Seoul could have known about the old sewer tunnels. This could only mean one thing: Alpha has a collaborator. His expression hardens as he turns to his bodyguard, instructing him to make contact with Hat. Deep within the old sewer passages, Alpha and Kim move cautiously through the dimly lit tunnels. Alpha remarks that it has been a long time since they last came here. Kim nods, recalling the past. Back in the day, whenever they were outnumbered by gangsters, this maze-like structure served as their perfect escape route. Even after the nuclear war, the passage remained intact. Without a map, navigating through it would be nearly impossible. As they continue forward, they reach a split in the path. Kim hesitates, staring at the two diverging tunnels before them. His memory falters, and he struggles to recall the correct way. Alpha, without hesitation, points to the right. Kim chuckles, acknowledging that he really must be getting old. However, he quickly realizes that age might not be the only factor. He has always found it strange. Alpha's knowledge of this place is unnaturally precise, almost as if he were more familiar with it than Kim himself. A thought lingers in his mind. Just how long has Alpha been alive? With a body that neither ages nor dies, the question remains unanswered. Kim sighs, dropping the topic. There's no point in asking. Alpha has never answered his questions before. Suddenly, Alpha halts, sensing something ahead. He immediately signals Kim to stop as well. His voice lowers as he warns of multiple approaching footsteps, heading straight toward them. Kim tenses. He questions how their pursuers managed to track them down. With no place to hide, their only option is to find another route. Alpha, however, does not respond. Meanwhile, deeper in the tunnels, a group of armed mercenaries searches for Alpha. Their hunt is interrupted when they spot a figure emerging from the shadows, Alpha himself, walking toward them without hesitation. Without wasting a second, they open fire. A barrage of bullets fills the tunnel, but Alpha raises a single hand to shield himself. The bullets strike his arm but fail to harm him in the slightest. Before they can comprehend what is happening, their own bodies are suddenly riddled with bullets. Confusion turns to panic as they collapse one by one. It is only then that they realize Alpha has been firing from inside his jacket all along. As the last of them falls, Alpha lowers his weapon, placing it in plain view before the remaining mercenaries. A murmur spreads among the survivors, their voices trembling in disbelief. No matter how many times they shoot him, Alpha refuses to die. Without giving them another chance, Alpha unleashes a final volley, eliminating the rest in an instant. With the battle over, Alpha and Kim continue on their way. Kim, still processing the sheer insanity of what he just witnessed, mutters under his breath, "Alpha is absolutely insane." As Alpha and Kim move forward, a sudden glint of metal cuts through the air, a knife speeding directly toward Kim. Before he can react, Alpha steps in, raising his hand just in time to block the attack. The blade pierces deep into his palm, stopping mere inches from Kim. A voice echoes through the tunnel, filled with amusement. The unseen figure muses over the rumors. No matter how many times Alpha is shot, he refuses to die. But now an interesting discovery has been made. He still feels pain. Kim, eyes sharp, immediately recognizes the danger. He mutters that their opponent is highly skilled. Alpha, unfazed by the injury, instructs Kim to step back. His voice is calm but firm. From the shadows, a figure finally reveals himself. He observes Alpha with intrigue, wondering aloud if he might be some kind of mutant. Until now, he has only encountered one mutant before, their team's little Esper. A twisted grin spreads across his face as he takes a step closer. There is something he has been dying to find out. With a disturbing eagerness, he poses a chilling question: has Alpha ever been decapitated before? His grin widens, eyes gleaming with sadistic curiosity. Would Alpha survive even if his head were cut off? He leans forward slightly, almost whispering the question as if savoring the thought. Isn't Alpha curious too? Alpha swiftly draws his knife, prompting the man before him to smirk at the sight. Amused, the man taunts him, questioning if he truly wants a knife fight. Without hesitation, he lunges forward, slashing his blade toward Alpha, but Alpha skillfully dodges, his mind quickly analyzing the opponent's speed. The man is fast, faster than expected, and despite his exaggerated movements, he leaves no openings. Alpha realizes that this man is a natural when it comes to handling a knife. The man grins, clearly enjoying the fight, and urges Alpha to show more of his skills. With renewed aggression, he launches another attack, forcing Alpha to evade once more. Growing impatient, the man scoffs, demanding to know if Alpha plans to just dodge forever. Seizing an opportunity, he leaps toward Alpha, attempting a decisive strike. But in a split second, Alpha counters with a powerful kick, sending the man crashing to the ground. Without wasting a moment, Alpha moves in to finish him off with a punch. But just before impact, the man rolls away, narrowly avoiding the attack. Rising to his feet, he chuckles, comparing Alpha's movements to that of a wild beast. Meanwhile, Kim observes the fight, realizing that Alpha is gradually overpowering his opponent. Sensing an opening, Kim moves toward a gun lying nearby, determined to use this chance. However, the moment he reaches for the weapon, the man notices him. Without hesitation, he hurls his knife at lightning speed. The blade pierces straight into Kim's leg, stopping him in his tracks. Alpha's eyes widen in shock at the sudden turn of events. The man capitalizes on the distraction, launching a ruthless strike at Alpha. In one swift motion, he slashes his blade through Alpha's neck, severing his head from his body. Kim watches in horror as Alpha's lifeless form collapses to the ground. The man erupts into laughter, triumphantly declaring that he has finally captured the feared executor, dismissing him as nothing special after all. But before he can revel in his victory for long, Kim speaks up. Reminding the man of his own words from the start, Kim questions if simply severing Alpha's head would be enough to kill him. If the man truly believed that, then he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The man, now filled with dread, turns around hastily, only to find Alpha standing right behind him. Before he can react, Alpha grips his face tightly, his voice calm yet menacing. A hint of amusement lingers as he acknowledges the man's decent knife skills. But among all the executors, the man had the misfortune of crossing paths with him. It was simply bad luck. Desperate, the man lashes out with his knife, launching a flurry of rapid attacks. But no matter how many times the blade strikes, Alpha remains unfazed. His expression doesn't change, his grip remains firm. And then, with a sudden surge of force, he slams the man's face into the wall. Without letting go, he drags him along the rough surface before hurling him across the room. The impact is brutal. His lifeless body collapses on the spot. With the fight over, Alpha turns to Kim and walks toward him. In a firm yet steady voice, he tells him to get up, offering his support. Together, they prepare to leave. As they move, Alpha speaks, questioning Kim's decision to intervene. If he had just stayed back, none of this would have happened. But Kim, despite his injuries, refuses to back down. His pride won't allow it. He may be old, but that doesn't mean he's helpless. Alpha smirks at his response, remarking that without that pride, he'd already be dead. The phrase suits him perfectly. With that exchange, the two walk away, disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Amber anxiously waits. It has been too long since Alpha last contacted her. A growing sense of unease creeps into her mind. Something doesn't feel right. She rises from her seat, deciding that waiting is no longer an option. If Alpha won't respond, she'll send a search team herself. But before she can take action, an unexpected presence makes itself known. Out of nowhere, a figure suddenly enters through the window, moving swiftly and silently. Amber's instincts take over. She immediately draws her gun, aiming at the intruder. The figure, a young woman, slowly rises to her feet. With a confident gaze, she looks directly at Amber and speaks. She already knows who Amber is, the administrator sent to Seoul by the world government. The scene shifts to an abandoned city on the outskirts. Emerging from the underground, Alpha and Kim step into the open air. Alpha takes a moment to assess their surroundings before concluding that they've finally lost their pursuers. However, while escaping was a success, his thoughts linger on Kim's injured leg. The wound could slow them down. Kim, noticing Alpha's concern, directs his attention elsewhere. In the distance, a helicopter approaches, its rotors slicing through the air. Suspicion rises in Kim's mind as he questions whether their enemies are truly desperate enough to send a helicopter after them. Alpha, however, quickly dismisses the idea. This isn't their enemy, it's an ally. Moments later, the helicopter lands in front of them. As the doors slide open, Amber steps out, making her way toward Alpha. A sense of relief washes over her as she sees him standing there. Without hesitation, she acknowledges his survival, expressing her relief that he made it out safely. Alpha, maintaining his usual composure, greets her in return. Though he appreciates her concern, he reminds her that there was no need to worry. Yet, despite his reassurance, she still went through the trouble of coming all this way. Amused, he remarks on her consideration. Amber, however, isn't having it. Frustration seeps into her voice as she argues that he took far too long to contact her, leaving her no choice but to intervene. Shifting the conversation, she introduces Kim, stating that he will serve as their new informant. Kim, ever the businessman, simply responds with a smirk, instructing them to call him Boss Kim. Recognizing his name, Amber recalls Alpha mentioning him before. She expresses her gratitude for his cooperation and informs him that they will escort him to the hospital inside the government complex. There, he will receive both medical treatment and protection. Curious about how she managed to track them down so precisely, Alpha questions Amber about their exact location being discovered. However, Amber remains vague. The details can wait. For now, she urges him to return with them, as things have become far more complicated than expected. Inside the world government complex, the scene unfolds with the young girl who had previously entered Amber's office through the window. The moment Alpha lays eyes on her, curiosity sparks in his mind. Without hesitation, he questions Amber, wanting to know who this kid is. Amber takes a moment before recounting the events that led to the girl's arrival. When she first saw the girl entering through the window, her instincts immediately kicked in. She had drawn her gun, ready to eliminate the potential threat. However, before she could fire, the girl had spoken, directly addressing her as the sole administrator of the world government. Just as Amber was about to pull the trigger, the girl had panicked, quickly clarifying that she hadn't come to fight. She had come to warn her. Alpha was in danger. Now, standing before the girl, Alpha processes the situation and speaks, nodding that this child knew everything about their circumstances. Amber confirms his assumption. Not only was the girl aware, but every detail she provided had been entirely accurate. Alpha shifts his focus toward the girl, demanding to know her true identity. The girl, caught off guard, hesitates before meekly responding with uncertainty. But before she can deflect the question further, Alpha closes the distance between them. Placing his hand on her head, he leans in, his voice calm yet commanding. He wasn't asking for her name. At this moment, Amber steps in, providing Alpha with the answer he seeks. The girl is a psychic, an esper. Her abilities include enhanced vision, clairvoyance, and basic telekinesis, abilities that are extremely rare, even on a global scale. However, despite her gifts, she had been captured and sold to Gangcheol. It wasn't the first time criminals had exploited espers for their own gain. Hearing this, Alpha nods in understanding. It all makes sense now. A normal person wouldn't have been able to infiltrate a high-security facility like this. Breaking the silence, the girl finally speaks up. She hesitates for a moment before asking if it would be acceptable for her to assist them. Alpha raises an eyebrow, questioning her sudden proposal. The girl then explains the weight of her past. Gangcheol had forced her to commit terrible acts against her will. She had thought about escaping, but in this land there was nowhere to run. No matter where she went, they would always find her. Looking up at Alpha, determination flickers in her eyes. She calls him Master, recognizing his strength as an executor. If the world government was truly working toward peace, then she wanted to be part of it. She wanted to use her abilities for something meaningful, but deep down, doubt still lingered in her heart. Or perhaps she had already done too many unforgivable things to ever be redeemed. As Alpha looks at the young girl before him, a distant memory surfaces in his mind, his daughter. The girl is about the same age. For a brief moment, a flicker of warmth crosses his usually stoic expression. Without a word, he gently places his hand on the girl's head, his touch firm yet comforting. Acknowledging her courage, he commends her for choosing to help rather than hide. However, he makes it clear that there's nothing for her to do here. Hearing this, the girl quickly protests. She begins to explain how her abilities could assist them, but before she can finish, Alpha cuts her off. His tone remains firm as he reminds her that executors do not accept help from children. The fact that she managed to escape Gangcheol and reach them was already impressive, and for that, he wouldn't turn her away. But if she acted suspiciously in any way, he wouldn't hesitate to take action against her. With that final warning, Alpha turns away, signaling the end of the conversation. He and Amber begin walking away, leaving the girl behind. As they move through the corridor, Alpha speaks to Amber, instructing her to request protection for the girl from the higher-ups. Someone should come to pick her up. Amber, however, sighs in disappointment. With the girl's abilities, she could have been a valuable asset to their operations. Alpha dismisses the thought. To him, she's just a child, and children should be allowed to live like children. Shifting the focus, he wonders aloud what Gangcheol's next move will be. At that moment, the scene transitions to the depths of the old sewers. Within the damp, dimly lit tunnels, a figure steps forward, 3rd Squad Elite Choi Hyung. His gaze locks onto a motionless body sprawled across the floor. It's Hat, the man Alpha had eliminated earlier. Surveying the scene, Choi Hyung reaches for his communicator and dials his captain. His voice is steady yet laced with tension as he reports the situation. Hat has been completely wiped out. That executor is far more dangerous than they had anticipated. On the other end of the line, the captain exhales slowly, taking a drag from his cigarette. There's no trace of surprise in his voice, only a quiet resolve. It seems he has no other choice. Next time, he'll handle it himself. Inside the World Government headquarters in North America, the atmosphere is calm yet busy. Seated at his desk, the director casually reads the latest news while engaging in a video call with Alpha. On the screen, Alpha wastes no time getting to the point. He informs the director about the young girl and her situation. Gangcheol is after her, and she needs protection. To ensure her safety, he requests a transport aircraft to bring her to headquarters. The director barely looks up from his screen as he responds. Sending a team sounds simple in theory, but the reality is more complicated. At the moment, there are no available transports. For now, Alpha will have to keep the girl where she is. Hearing this, Alpha's frustration is evident. The facility is no place for a child. They don't have the capacity to look after her. The director finally shifts his attention to the screen, a hint of amusement in his tone. He has already reviewed the file Alpha sent. The girl is 17, not exactly a child. Given the state of the world, she's practically an adult. Alpha, however, remains firm. To him, she's still just a naive kid. The director chuckles, dismissing Alpha's perspective as outdated. She may legally be underage, but the old world definitions no longer apply. The situation is what it is, and for now, Alpha has no choice but to wait. Without further discussion, the director ends the call. Alpha exhales sharply, irritation flickering across his face. Without another word, he rises from his seat and walks away, knowing that, for now, the matter is out of his hands. Amber turns to Alpha, acknowledging the situation. Since no transport is available, they have no choice but to keep the girl here for now. Alpha nods but remains cautious. He states that he will keep a close watch on her. His experience has taught him that espers are unpredictable. Curious, Amber glances at him before posing a question. Isn't Alpha technically an esper too? No matter how many times he gets shot or caught in explosions, he always heals instantly. Alpha's expression remains unreadable as he dismisses the comparison, stating simply that it's different. Then, he falls silent. Amber studies him, her curiosity only deepening. That's it. No further explanation. She wonders why he refuses to elaborate. Shifting the conversation, Alpha asks about Kim's condition. Amber informs him that Kim will be discharged soon, though he will need crutches for a while. A smirk crosses Alpha's face as he remarks that seeing a limping boss Kim should be amusing. With that, the two head toward Kim's room. As they step inside, they are met with an unexpected sight. The esper girl is seated beside Kim, gently feeding him fruit. Kim, clearly enjoying the attention, looks happier than ever. Alpha watches the scene unfold before speaking up, demanding an explanation. Still eating, Kim responds casually, remarking that the girl is quite kind and affectionate. He never had children of his own, but in this moment, it almost feels like he has a granddaughter. Smiling, he reaches into his pocket and offers her a small treat. He doesn't have much to give, but he asks if she would like some red bean jelly. The esper girl gratefully accepts, thanking him. Amber observes the interaction before commenting that Kim is much kinder than she had expected. Alpha, on the other hand, is less convinced. He scoffs at the thought, finding it hard to believe that the grumpy old man in front of him is being described as kind. He has truly seen everything now. Amber then steps closer to Kim, suggesting that he stay at the government complex for a while. As an administrator, she assures him that she will provide as much support as possible. Kim appreciates the offer. He acknowledges that the vast network of information he has spent decades building is finally going to serve a greater purpose. After a moment, he turns to the esper girl and calls out to her. He asks if she could get him a glass of water. Eager to help, the girl immediately activates her abilities, attempting to summon the glass using telekinesis. Before she can complete the action, Alpha swiftly flicks her forehead, stopping her in her tracks. His voice remains stern as he reprimands her, reminding her not to use her abilities carelessly. She is the one under surveillance, and she shouldn't forget that. With a sigh, the girl reluctantly agrees, complaining that he doesn't need to be so harsh. Ignoring her protest, Alpha turns to Amber. He informs her that he will escort the girl back to her room himself. Without another word, he leads her away, ensuring that she understands her place. As Alpha and the esper girl leave, Kim watches them disappear down the hall. A sigh escapes him as he speaks, reflecting on the harsh reality before them. It's heartbreaking to see a child like that, trapped and exploited by a criminal organization. Amber agrees. The whole situation is nothing short of tragic. After a moment of silence, Kim turns to her and asks what will happen to the girl now. Amber explains that the world government has several child protection facilities, including a specialized center dedicated to spurs. Soon, they will send her there, where she can receive proper education and care. Hearing this, Kim seems relieved. At the very least, she will have a chance at a better life. Amber, however, takes note of his reaction. A small thought crosses her mind. Was he getting attached? The two of them are alone now. Perhaps she should try to cheer him up. But then another realization hits her. This might be her chance to ask about Alpha. With a slight smile, she shifts the conversation. She casually mentions that she has heard Kim and Alpha are close and assumes they must have known each other for a long time. Kim's expression darkens slightly and he responds in a serious tone. Did that bastard say that? Well, their connection does go way back. Amber, intrigued, admits that she has only met Alpha during this mission but finds him incredibly difficult to read. Kim agrees without hesitation. He understands that feeling all too well. Curious, Amber presses further, asking if Kim knows a lot about Alpha. Kim lets out a small chuckle, shaking his head. Not really. That guy is full of secrets, but one thing he'll never forget is their first meeting. It happened over 30 years ago. Back then, Alpha had saved him from a dangerous situation. To this day, Kim has no idea what mission Alpha had been on. He never said a word. But after that, they fought side by side against gangs, forming an effective team. For 3 years, Kim felt like they had become close. But then, without warning, Alpha vanished. He left just as mysteriously as he had appeared, like a ghost. At first, Kim had felt betrayed. But then he realized something. He had never once seen Alpha's real face. With a knowing look, Kim offers Amber some advice. She shouldn't get attached to Alpha. He isn't like the rest of them. He lives in a world separate from theirs, like a ghost drifting through existence. Amber listens carefully, absorbing every word. As she rises from her seat to leave, thoughts race through her mind. This only makes her more curious than before. Living in a separate world? She thinks she understands what Kim means, yet at the same time, she doesn't. And if Alpha hasn't changed in 30 years, what is he? Before she can dwell on it further, a voice calls out to her from behind. She turns to see an agent approaching, visibly shaken. Amber immediately asks what happened. The agent, struggling to catch his breath, delivers urgent news. A rebellion is forming within the police force. Amber's expression hardens as the gravity of the situation sinks in. The scene then shifts to the Seoul Metropolitan Police Headquarters. Inside, tension fills the air as police inspectors gather in one place. At the center of it all stands the true power behind the police force, Chief Inspector Cho Pil-do. Inside the administrator's office, the tension is palpable. Amber stands before Alpha, briefing him on the situation. She informs him about the rebellion forming within the police force. Alpha, maintaining his usual composure, questions the reliability of the intelligence. Amber assures him that their informant has verified it. It's solid. There's no doubt about its authenticity. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Alpha acknowledges the threat. If the police are turning against them, this is far more serious than a simple internal conflict. Amber, however, can't shake her frustration. As the administrator, it was her responsibility to detect such threats in advance. To have overlooked it feels like a failure. But Alpha dismisses the thought. The information was too scarce. There was nothing she could have done differently. Instead of dwelling on blame, their priority should be resolving the crisis. Despite his reassurance, Amber remains troubled. How are they supposed to handle this? If only they had detailed intel on the police organization, things would be much easier. Just then, a voice interrupts them from behind. Both Alpha and Amber turn to see Kim standing there. Without hesitation, he steps forward, offering his assistance. He assures them that gathering intel is not an issue. He will handle it. He then shares his own insight, stating that the rebellion is likely linked to Gangcheol. Given the circumstances, there's a strong possibility that the criminal syndicate is directly involved. Amber, surprised by how quickly Kim reached this conclusion, questions how he already knows so much. Kim smirks before explaining. Though he may have retired from shootouts, he still keeps his ear to the ground. He has always stayed informed. Amber takes the opportunity to make a request. If Kim can, she asks him to investigate the police power structure and identify the key figures behind the rebellion. Without hesitation, Kim agrees. As he turns to leave, he promises to dig up whatever information he can. Once Kim is gone, Alpha shifts his attention back to Amber. He asks if she has a plan. Amber takes a deep breath before explaining. At first, when she discovered that some officers were working with Gangcheol, the situation had seemed impossible. Rooting out all the traitors felt like an unattainable goal. But now, things are different. With the rebellion surfacing, they might finally have a chance to wipe them out in one decisive strike. Alpha silently processes her words, turning a crisis into an opportunity. Not bad. Amber then suggests they step out discreetly for a while. They have their own police connections. It's time to put them to use. Inside Police Inspector Yu Jong-hoo's residence, tension filled the air. Seated in deep thought, he couldn't shake off the weight of recent events. He questioned how things had escalated so drastically. As a member of Cho Pil-doo's faction, he had worked alongside Gangcheol, but he never expected them to take such extreme measures. This was nothing short of a declaration of war against the world government. Uncertainty clouded his mind. What was he supposed to do now? His wife approached, noticing his troubled expression. She asked if something was wrong, assuming it might be discomfort from dinner. He quickly dismissed her concerns, assuring her it was nothing. But she wasn't convinced and pressed him to speak. Before he could respond, the sound of the doorbell interrupted their conversation. His wife wondered who would visit at such an hour. Yu Jong stood up, deciding to check himself. As he opened the door, he was stunned to see Alpha and Amber standing outside. Amber greeted him with a warm smile, casually asking how he had been. Yu Jong was taken aback by their unexpected presence. His wife, curious about the visitors, asked who they were. Before he could answer, Amber stepped forward with a pleasant smile, introducing herself and Alpha as old colleagues of her husband. She explained that they happened to be in the area and thought they would drop by to say hello. To add to the friendly gesture, she handed over a bouquet of flowers. His wife, touched by the kindness, welcomed them inside. She turned to Yu Jong, urging him not to just stand there and to invite them in properly. Once inside, she quickly offered them food, asking if they had eaten yet. Shortly after, she set a table filled with various dishes, cheerfully insisting that while it wasn't much, she hoped they would enjoy the meal while catching up with their old friend. As Amber ate, she curiously examined one of the dishes, recognizing it as barbecued ribs. Taking a bite, she was instantly impressed by the taste and asked if it was Korean food. Alpha explained that it was called kaegalbi. Then, handing her another dish, he mentioned that this was an even more common staple in Korea. Amber lifted the dish, noting its bright red color and appetizing appearance. However, the moment she took a bite, the overwhelming spice caught her off guard. Alpha, barely holding back a smirk, informed her that it was called kimchi. As the two interacted, Yu Jong watched them closely, his thoughts filled with suspicion. Their behavior seemed oddly casual, but he knew better than to take it lightly. He wondered if they were just putting on an act. He finally decided to address the real issue, asking them what had brought them to his house at this hour. Alpha wasted no time, stating that Yu Jong should already have an idea. Given his position, he must be aware of the situation unfolding within the police force. Yu Jong remained silent, refusing to respond. Sensing his hesitation, Alpha leaned in slightly, his tone growing more serious. He reminded Yu Jong that he had been given a chance and warned him against making a foolish decision. Yu Jong, now visibly uneasy, questioned what he meant. Alpha stepped even closer, lowering his voice. He made it clear that the world government would not tolerate those who sought to throw the land into chaos. With the dome construction in progress, everything would be settled soon. It was only a matter of time. At that moment, Amber brought up a different topic. She casually mentioned that she had heard about his young son, who was about to enter middle school. Yu Jong immediately became defensive, his voice filled with anger and concern. He demanded to know if they were threatening his family. Amber calmly denied any such intentions, stating that they did not resort to such tactics. However, she subtly reminded him of his responsibility as a father. She pointed out that Gangcheol's vision for Seoul was not one where children could grow up safely. If he chose to cooperate, his family would receive full protection. With that, she urged him to make the right decision. Yu Jong stepped away from the conversation, moving toward the window. Looking outside, he let out a weary sigh before turning back to Alpha and Amber. Their ability to push people to their limits was remarkable, almost as if they thrived on making others lose their minds. Meanwhile, inside the Gangcheol Group headquarters, tension ran high. Chairman Youngdi sat in his office, listening as one of his subordinates delivered troubling news. Team 3 had failed, the Esper had escaped. The subordinate explained that she had taken advantage of the chaos, while their squads were deployed elsewhere. Disgusted, the chairman scoffed at their incompetence, calling it absolutely pathetic. The subordinate continued, informing him that one of Team 3's captains wished to meet him in person to offer an apology. Without hesitation, Chairman Young-di rejected the request. He wanted the captain to sweat a little before facing him. Shifting his focus, he turned to Park Cheol-young and signaled that it was time to move forward with their plan. Park Cheol-young acknowledged the command, confirming that the police leadership had already made their decision. By tomorrow morning, the police forces would launch an attack on the World Government Complex. The next day, at precisely 9 a.m., a massive police force gathered outside the government complex. Officers stood in formation, encircling the entire perimeter with a full-scale blockade. Among them, one officer relayed an update over the phone to Chief Cho Pil, reporting that the complex was now completely surrounded and awaiting further orders. Inside the police headquarters, Situation Room, Chief Cho Pil listened carefully before giving his response. The order was clear: prepare to breach. However, they were instructed to escort the administrator as politely as possible. At 6:30 in the morning, Yu Jong finished putting on his police uniform, ready to leave for duty. Just as he was about to step out, his wife approached him, confusion evident on her face. She reminded him that today was supposed to be his day off. There was a slight hesitation in his voice as he responded, explaining that something urgent had come up. Without elaborating further, he turned to leave. Before he could step outside, his wife spoke again, her tone warm and affectionate. She mentioned that she had always thought he looked amazing in his uniform. Her words made him stop. Turning back, he looked at her for a moment before pulling her into a gentle embrace. Later that morning, at exactly 9:00 a.m., a massive police force had assembled outside the main gate of the World Government Complex. Their commander raised his hand, giving the silent order to move in. Without hesitation, the soldiers charged forward, breaking down the entrance. Inside, a group of guards stood in position, only to be met with the soldiers' firm command: drop their weapons and get on the ground. Realizing they had no choice, the guards complied. One of the soldiers immediately ordered his team to restrain them and confiscate their firearms while the rest pushed forward into the building. Within the police headquarters, an inspector reported to Chief Cho Pil that all outposts and corridors had been secured without any resistance. The chief found it surprising. He had expected a fight. The inspector explained that the enemy understood the situation. They couldn't possibly win against a real military force. Acknowledging this, Chief Cho Pil ordered his forces to keep advancing. The administrator was their top priority. If they wanted to force the world government to the negotiating table, they needed to capture her. At that moment, another inspector stepped forward, informing him of an incoming video call. Curious, the chief smirked, wondering if the administrator was already surrendering. He ordered the call to be put through. Amber's face appeared on the screen, frustration clear in her voice as she demanded an explanation. Attacking a government complex was blatant treason against the world government. Unfazed, Chief Cho Pil let out a short laugh. He mocked her for failing to grasp the reality of the situation. The world government's intelligence division wasn't as sharp as he had expected. The police were done being mere lapdogs. What real power did the world government even have in Seoul? If survival was the goal, aligning with a stronger force, or better yet, seizing control of the city, was the logical choice. As he finished speaking, an inspector leaned in and quietly informed him that the administrator was likely in her office. Satisfied, the chief gave the order, "Go get her." A squad of soldiers immediately stormed toward Amber's office. The moment they breached the door, they found the room empty. Confusion spread among them as one of the inspectors spoke in disbelief. She wasn't there. Chief Cho Pill's expression darkened. His voice sharpened as he demanded an explanation. It was then that realization struck him. His eyes narrowed as he clenched his jaw. The video call, it had been pre-recorded. Frustration boiled over as he slammed his fist on the desk. That explained why her forces had surrendered so easily. She had already escaped. Without wasting another second, he turned to another inspector, his voice filled with urgency. She had to be nearby. He ordered them to find her immediately. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed from outside, sending a wave of unease through everyone in the room. The unexpected sound made the officers tense up, exchanging nervous glances. Chief Cho Pill wasted no time. Turning to one of the inspectors, he barked an order. What were they waiting for? Go check it out. The inspector hesitated for only a moment before rushing toward the door. Just as he reached for the handle, the door suddenly slammed open with tremendous force, hitting him square in the face. He stumbled back, reeling from the impact, as several soldiers came crashing to the floor, having been forcefully thrown through the entrance. The scene left the chief and his inspectors in shock. Their eyes widened as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. Then a voice broke through the tension. Alpha stepped inside, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the room. With a cold, mocking tone, he remarked that this was where all the rats had been hiding. A moment later, Amber entered, carrying herself with the confidence of someone in complete control. Addressing the stunned officers, she greeted them with a smirk. She formally introduced herself as Amber, the World Government Administrator for Seoul. Since they had been so eager to see her, she had decided to come to them first. Chief Cho Pil could barely believe what he was witnessing. His voice, filled with disbelief, demanded an explanation. The entire complex had been surrounded. How had they managed to get here? The answer came in the form of a flashback. That morning at 8:00 a.m., near the rear gate of the government complex, Amber ran alongside Alpha, her breathing heavy. She voiced her concern, would Yu Zhang keep his word? Alpha remained calm, stating that if he didn't, they would simply force their way out. Their conversation was cut short as a group of soldiers appeared ahead, blocking their escape. Alpha immediately signaled Amber to step back, preparing for a confrontation. Before anything could escalate, a familiar voice rang out from behind the soldiers. Yu Zhang stepped forward, his expression firm. Without hesitation, he ordered the men to step aside and let them through. Whatever happened, they had seen nothing. He would take full responsibility. Amber and Alpha didn't waste the opportunity. As they moved past him, they offered their thanks. Yu Zhang simply reminded them that the path was clear for now, but they needed to avoid other patrols and be careful. He would deal with the consequences. Back in the present, Amber relayed the story to the chief, her tone almost amused. It seemed that not all police officers shared his way of thinking. Hearing this, Chief Cho Pil's expression twisted with anger. He snapped at them, calling their words ridiculous. Did they seriously believe they could accomplish anything here, just the two of them? As soon as he finished speaking, more soldiers poured into the room, their weapons ready. Amber turned to Alpha, her voice carrying a clear command. As his administrator, she was giving him a direct order, take down every last one of them. Chief Cho Pil wasted no time in responding. His voice rang out with authority as he commanded his soldiers to arrest Alpha and Amber immediately. Without hesitation, the soldiers surged forward to apprehend them. However, as one soldier swung his baton toward Alpha, a sudden force stopped him in his tracks. Alpha's fist struck the baton with such power that it snapped in half. The soldier's eyes widened in shock, but before he could react, Alpha delivered a swift punch to his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Seeing this, the other soldiers quickly regrouped, raising their shields as they moved in to subdue him. Alpha, however, was faster. Dodging their attacks with ease, he struck one of them with a devastating punch, sending the soldier flying backward. More soldiers rushed in, attempting to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. But Alpha used their own shields against them, blocking their attacks and shoving them backward with incredible force. In one swift motion, he leaped into the air and launched a brutal assault, tearing through their formation. Soldiers collapsed around him, groaning in pain as they struggled to recover. As Alpha straightened up, more reinforcements arrived, surrounding him from all sides. Their leader shouted for them to hold their ground, ordering them not to let Alpha reach the chief. Alpha scanned the soldiers encircling him, a smirk forming on his lips. They had misunderstood his purpose. He wasn't here for the chief. With a sharp glint in his eyes, he made his intentions clear. He was here to beat them down and reform them. Without another word, he charged forward, launching into another devastating attack. Chief Cho Pil watched in growing panic as Alpha tore through his soldiers with ease. His confidence wavered, and a sense of fear began to creep in. Desperation took over as he turned to the inspectors, shouting at them to stop hesitating. Forget capturing Alpha, just shoot. One of the inspectors hesitated before reminding him that firearms were prohibited inside the command center. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Chief Cho Pil made a split-second decision. He had to escape. Turning abruptly, he attempted to flee. However, his path was immediately blocked. Amber stepped in front of him, her expression calm and unwavering. With a cold tone, she asked where he thought he was going. Frustrated and cornered, the chief lashed out, throwing a punch at her. But before his attack could land, Amber struck first. With lightning speed, she delivered a devastating Brazilian kick straight to his face. The impact sent him crashing to the floor. Wasting no time, Amber's voice rang through the command center, her authority undeniable. She declared that Chief Cho Pil was now under arrest by the world government. Ordering everyone to drop their weapons, she made it clear that resistance was pointless. A heavy silence filled the room. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances before ultimately conceding. One by one, they dropped their weapons, surrendering without further struggle. As the tension settled, Alpha turned to Amber with a smirk. With a hint of sarcasm, he remarked that it always felt like he did all the hard work while she took all the glory. Amber, unfazed, simply responded with a knowing smile. They were just playing their roles properly. At that very moment, inside the world government complex, confusion spread among the soldiers. Their commander, growing increasingly anxious, demanded an explanation. Why weren't they receiving any orders from command? What was going on? Before he could make sense of the situation, a soldier rushed toward him, his face pale with urgency. Delivering grim news, he reported that the command center had been attacked by an enforcer. Chief Cho Pil had been taken into custody. The commander stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. But before he could react, a group of soldiers suddenly surrounded him. As they stepped aside, Yu Zhang emerged from among them. With a firm voice, he declared that it was over, everything was over. Realizing the inevitability of their defeat, the remaining forces hesitated before ultimately surrendering. Weapons clattered to the ground as they gave in to the reality of their leader's downfall. It was soon revealed that with Chief Cho Pil and his co-conspirators removed from power, the rebellion was swiftly crushed. They were put on trial, and most were sentenced to imprisonment. Meanwhile, Inspector Yu Zhang, who played a crucial role in stabilizing the situation, was promoted one rank to senior superintendent as a special reward. 3 days later, standing together, Alpha and Amber reflected on the events that had unfolded. Alpha acknowledged that while the situation had been a major crisis, it had ultimately reached a favorable resolution. Amber nodded, admitting that at one point, she had no idea how things would turn out. With a smirk, Alpha shifted the conversation to their next concern, Gangchial. Now that the rebellion had been dealt with, they could finally focus on the real threat. He then gave her a knowing look, remarking that she was beginning to understand now. Amber frowned, confused by his words. Alpha clarified, This was why she had been assigned as the administrator here. The crisis had proven her capabilities, and as expected, the director never made mistakes. Hearing this, Amber felt a slight sense of embarrassment, but responded with a quiet acknowledgement. Not dwelling on it any further, Alpha gestured for them to move. It was time to go. Boss Kim was waiting for them. Upon entering the administrator's office, they found Kim already deep in thought. As they approached, he wasted no time in briefing them. He had obtained new intelligence on Gangcheol. After covertly reaching out to trusted informants, he had identified the real threat, Gangcheol's most extreme unit, Team 3. This unit was responsible for most of the terrorist attacks targeting the world government. Amber immediately connected the dots. If that was the case, then the assassination of the former administrator was that their doing too. Kim confirmed her suspicions. Team 3 was behind it. However, what made them particularly dangerous was their elite squad. These members weren't ordinary criminals. They were mercenaries, hitmen, and ex-military operatives. Hearing this, Alpha recalled something. The man he had fought in the sewers, he must have been one of them. That meant he was probably seething with rage at this very moment. Kim nodded but emphasized that what truly mattered was what was coming next. Then, shifting his tone, he asked if Alpha remembered a traitor from 30 years ago. Alpha's expression darkened. How could he forget? Kim continued. 30 years ago, Alpha himself had been the one to eliminate that traitor. But there was more to the story. That man had a young son, one who had now grown into a formidable enemy. His name was Gu Kang-min, and he was the leader of the elite squad that was now targeting them. At Gangcheol's Team 3 secret hideout, the elite squad leader, Gu Kang, lay asleep on the sofa. A terrifying childhood nightmare haunted him, one where Alpha was coming straight for him, ready to kill. Jolting awake in fear, he struggled to believe it. Over 30 years had passed, yet the thought lingered. Could Alpha really be the one he had been searching for all this time? Before he could dwell on it further, the unit leader of Team 3 approached and spoke urgently. Park Cheol-young's police rebellion had failed, which meant this was their moment to act. If they moved now, they could seize the initiative. Gu Kang, unfazed, remained silent and reached for his drink. His indifference infuriated the unit leader, who snapped at him, demanding if he was even paying attention. Calmly, Gu Kang acknowledged the situation, but reminded him that opportunities for an attack didn't come often. If the decision was his to make, then others should step aside and wait for the results. His words provoked an angry reaction, but before the unit leader could retaliate, Gu Kang stood up and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Moving in closer, he reminded him that he had been dragged into this mess because others couldn't handle it on their own. And it wasn't just them who were in a hurry. Curious, the unit leader asked what he meant. Without looking back, Gu Kang walked away, leaving only one statement behind. He was eager to meet Alpha himself. Inside the World Government Complex, the employee cafeteria buzzed with activity. At one of the tables, Amber expressed her gratitude to Kim, thanking him once again for his cooperation. Thanks to his efforts, the internal police situation had improved significantly. Kim, however, dismissed the praise, insisting that he had only done his job. Meanwhile, Alpha looked at Amber and commented on the celebration dinner. While the idea was fine, he found it too modest. A proper celebration should at least involve a steak. Amber, slightly embarrassed, admitted that an administrator's salary wasn't as generous as one might think. Kim chuckled and turned to Alpha, saying there was no issue. He was addicted to black bean noodles, and since the kid was enjoying the meal too, everything was fine. At that moment, the Asper girl sat with them, happily eating her food. Noticing her presence, Alpha questioned why she was even there. Kim explained that she had tagged along because of the good food. Keeping her locked in a room all day didn't seem right, so he brought her along. As she ate, the Asper girl glanced at Alpha's untouched bowl and asked if she could have his spicy seafood soup. Alpha remained silent. Amber then turned to him, acknowledging the hard work he had put in this time. To show her appreciation, she thanked him directly. Alpha, unfazed, responded that breaking things and fighting was his job. He simply did what was required. Amber agreed, noting that he was certainly an expert in that field. She then added that she looked forward to working with him more. Alpha simply replied with a short acknowledgement. Amber, however, insisted that he should eat. He had earned it. Kim, amused, told her to forget it. In all the time he had known Alpha, he had never once seen him take off that gas mask. As Amber observed Alpha, a thought crossed her mind. Would it be rude to ask about his past? Before she could say anything, a man suddenly approached their table. He had come to deliver a message. Irritated at the interruption, Kim sighed in frustration. They had just started eating. The man, however, seemed urgent. He informed Amber that they had received a call from the director. He had an important message to deliver. Hearing this, Alpha's thoughts immediately shifted. The director. Amber and Alpha left to meet with the director. Upon their arrival, he immediately addressed them, apologizing for the sudden summons. The matter at hand was urgent. Amber, curious, asked what kind of decision had been made. The director informed them that an enforcer would be arriving the next day via private jet to join their team. Alpha, skeptical, questioned the decision. Previously, the director had stated that there weren't enough personnel available for deployment. So why the sudden reinforcement? The director clarified that this wasn't just about sending extra support. The new arrival would be replacing Alpha and assisting Administrator Amber. Alpha, on the other hand, was being reassigned to another mission. Both Amber and Alpha were caught off guard by the unexpected news. The director continued, explaining that a large-scale riot had erupted in Dome Sector 7. Intelligence suggested that an international terrorist organization was heavily involved. Meanwhile, Seoul's police had started cooperating, making Alpha's presence there unnecessary. His orders were to hand over his duties to the replacement and leave Seoul the next day. Additionally, he was to escort the Esper girl with him. Without hesitation, Alpha acknowledged the orders and agreed to follow them. Amber, however, was left in shock. In her mind, she struggled to process what had just happened. Alpha was being replaced, just like that, without any warning. The next day at the airport, a private jet touched down on the runway. As the aircraft came to a stop, the man chosen to replace Alpha stepped out. Looking around, he let out a disappointed sigh before speaking. In a teasing tone, he called out, expressing his frustration. Alpha hadn't even bothered to greet him. This man was an enforcer from the world government, and his name was Foxtrot. As Foxtrot stepped off the jet, Alpha approached with a casual remark, commenting on how long it had been and asking how the air in Seoul felt. Amber observed the newcomer, her thoughts running as she sized him up. So this was the enforcer sent to replace Alpha. Foxtrot met Alpha's gaze with a smirk. Alpha, in turn, asked if he still struggled with motion sickness. Without warning, Foxtrot lunged forward, attempting to strike Alpha with a sudden kick. Alpha swiftly dodged and countered with a punch, but Foxtrot evaded it just as easily. The exchange continued with Foxtrot planting his hand on the ground and launching a powerful kick at Alpha, forcing both of them to step back. Alpha assessed him carefully before acknowledging his progress. He had changed since the days when he was just an assistant. Foxtrot, unfazed, responded with confidence, nodding that Alpha hadn't lost his edge either. Watching from a distance, Amber sighed internally. Typical enforcers, was this really their way of greeting each other? Foxtrot then revealed that he could have handled the situation in Sector 7 on his own, but the higher-ups had insisted on sending Alpha instead. As always, they reserved the important missions for him. Alpha warned him not to take things lightly, reminding him that the mission in Seoul wouldn't be easy either. Foxtrot simply chuckled, brushing off the concern. Turning to Amber, he introduced himself with a friendly smile, extending his hand. He looked forward to working with her. Amber shook his hand and responded with mild surprise. Not all enforcers were as cold and standoffish as she had expected. Foxtrot chuckled again, explaining that Alpha was just different. In response, Alpha gave him a light punch on the head before shifting his attention back to Amber. He mentioned her upcoming appointment at police headquarters and noted that this was where their paths would separate. His plan was to stop by the complex, gather his belongings, and take the Esper girl with him before departing. Amber hesitated, admitting that everything felt so sudden. She had expected to have more time. Alpha, however, reminded her that this was simply how things worked for world government officials. Just like how she had unexpectedly found herself in her current position, sudden changes were inevitable. Extending his hand, he added that if fate allowed, they would meet again. Amber shook his hand firmly, telling him to take care. From a short distance away, Foxtrot watched their exchange in silence. After Alpha's departure, Amber and Foxtrot got into a car and set off together. Curious about the situation in Sector 7, Amber asked Foxtrot what exactly was going on. So far, all she had heard was that there was some civil unrest. Foxtrot confirmed that information. A large-scale anti-government riot had broken out inside the Dome sector, and headquarters believed Alpha was the best person for the job. They suspected a terrorist organization was involved, and from this point on, Alpha would be leading the investigation. Amber then questioned Foxtrot's way of addressing Alpha. Calling him Senpai suggested he had known him for a long time. Foxtrot explained that every enforcer knew Alpha, whether as a figure of admiration or jealousy. His presence in the Enforcement Bureau was overwhelming. Personally, he had got to know him during his apprenticeship under him. He then turned the question around, asking Amber what it was like working with Alpha. Amber took a moment to think before responding. It wasn't exactly normal. Hearing that, Foxtrot laughed. Meanwhile, on the roadside, a stationed soldier reported into his radio, informing his unit that the administrator's convoy had just passed through. As he finished his report, he suddenly noticed a vehicle approaching at high speed from behind. Sensing trouble, the soldier signaled for the vehicle to stop. However, the armored car didn't slow down. Instead, it charged straight ahead, ramming through the roadblock without hesitation. Realizing the threat, the soldier quickly opened fire at the vehicle, but the bullets did little to slow it down. Without stopping, the armored vehicle sped past, leaving destruction in its wake. Inside the vehicle, Gu Kang sat among his men, watching their progress closely. With a determined look, he announced that they were closing in on the administrator's car. Amber glanced at her driver and asked how much longer it would take to reach police headquarters. The driver estimated about 15 minutes. Hearing this, Amber urged him to speed up. Their schedule was tight, and they couldn't afford any delays. Just then, a sudden explosion erupted behind them. Shocked, Amber and Foxtrot immediately turned to look. Foxtrot quickly assessed the situation, realizing that the blast had hit their escort vehicle. Attacking this close to police headquarters, these guys had nothing to lose. Were they the Gangcheol members Alpha had mentioned? Without wasting a second, Foxtrot ordered the driver to accelerate. But the enemy vehicles had already closed the distance. Seeing no other option, Foxtrot took control of the wheel himself, expertly maneuvering to dodge the incoming attacks. The Gangcheol men relentlessly fired at them, but Foxtrot maintained control, skillfully avoiding every strike. Meanwhile, Gu Kang observed the chaos unfolding ahead. Irritated by the prolonged chase, he muttered in frustration. These bastards were tearing up the road. Without hesitation, he grabbed a rocket launcher, aimed directly at Amber's car, and fired. The rocket hit its target with devastating force. Amber's car spun out of control, crashing violently to the side. Inside the wrecked car, Foxtrot quickly assessed the situation. Had they managed to avoid a direct hit? Turning toward the back seat, he saw Amber lying unconscious. Checking her condition, he noted that her breathing and pulse were stable. That was a relief, but for now, dealing with the enemy came first. An emergency call had already been sent, and police riot squads were expected to arrive in about 10 minutes. Their target was likely Administrator Amber. Holding out for that long, what was the best course of action? Foxtrot hesitated for a moment, then reconsidered. No, instead of just holding out, what would Alpha have done in this situation? Outside, the Gangcheol men remained on high alert. Recognizing the opponent as an enforcer, they warned each other to stay sharp. Without wasting a second, Foxtrot hurled multiple smoke grenades around the area. Thick clouds of smoke spread rapidly, covering the battlefield. Taking advantage of the confusion, he slipped out of the car and engaged the enemies directly. As he struck down his opponents, a thought ran through his mind. If this were Alpha, he wouldn't just hold out, he would eliminate them all. Foxtrot had a long way to go. An enforcer thinking about retreating in a situation like this, unacceptable. The enemies were closing in. The only option was to take them down one by one. The Gangcheol members moved cautiously through the dense smoke, searching for their target. Suddenly, Foxtrot emerged from the haze. Before an enemy could react, Foxtrot grabbed his rifle and with precise shots from his pistol, riddled his body with bullets. Without hesitation, he turned his aim toward two more enemies standing behind and swiftly took them down as well. Just then, a presence behind him triggered his instincts. Spinning around, he raised his gun, ready to fire. But before he could pull the trigger, a female attacker lunged at him, knocking his pistol out of his grasp. As she leaped forward to strike again, Foxtrot quickly regained his footing and countered with a kick. The woman, however, expertly blocked his attack with her weapon and shoved him backward with force. Foxtrot stumbled and collided with another enemy. The gangster was about to strike, but before he could react, Foxtrot swiftly drew a knife from his belt and slashed his throat in one fluid motion. Foxtrot quickly analyzed the situation in his mind. The girl was skilled. Her movements were professionally trained, just as Alpha had described when mentioning the elite troops. But something felt off. She wasn't making any noise that would reveal his position. What was she planning? Without hesitation, Foxtrot launched a knife directly at her. She reacted instantly, blocking the attack with her weapon. Seizing the opportunity, he drew another knife and rushed in from behind. Time was running out. He needed to take them all down before the smoke cleared. The girl, however, was just as quick. She dodged his strike at the last moment. Before Foxtrot could adjust, a sudden force struck his back. A sharp, piercing pain shot through him as he was sent flying, crashing hard onto the ground. Gu Kang had arrived. Looking down at Foxtrot, Gu Kang remarked that the fight had been a little dangerous. He had let his guard down for a moment. But more importantly, he had no idea who this enforcer was. This wasn't the person he had been searching for. Foxtrot, still reeling from the attack, glanced up at Gu Kang. He hadn't even sensed his presence. Gu Kang's expression darkened as he clenched his fists. His voice was filled with frustration as he demanded to know, where was the masked one? At Gimpo Airport, Alpha prepares to leave the city once again. Kim watches him and remarks on his departure. Alpha acknowledges it, explaining that Foxtrot is still an inexperienced enforcer and will need support. He trusts Kim to assist her in the field. Kim reassures him, stating that eliminating criminals has always been his objective. Alpha approves, relying on him to uphold that mission. Kim then questions whether Alpha feels any regret about leaving. Alpha admits he does, specifically, for not being able to personally rid the city of its criminals. Kim silently scoffs at the response, finding Alpha's words cold and missing the real point of his question. Just then, the Esper girl approaches Kim, asking if he came to see her off. Without waiting for an answer, she embraces him warmly, urging him to take care of his health. Kim smiles, appreciating her kindness and sweetness, which he contrasts with someone else's demeanor. His pointed remark is clearly directed at Alpha, though the latter remains oblivious. Checking the time, Alpha cuts the farewell short, reminding them that their schedule is tight. By now, Amber and Foxtrot should have reached police headquarters. On the other side, Foxtrot is engaged in a fierce battle, exhaustion evident in his movements. Observing Gu Kang, he realizes the sheer strength of his opponent. Gu Kang acknowledges Foxtrot's resilience, nodding that as an enforcer, his endurance is expected. However, this isn't the fight he was hoping for. His real target is the masked one. With that, he charges forward, aiming a powerful punch at Foxtrot. Reacting swiftly, Foxtrot ducks just in time, evading the attack. Gu Kang immediately follows up with another punch, but Foxtrot sidesteps, countering with a kick aimed at his opponent's face. Gu Kang, however, blocks it effortlessly with his hand. He remarks on Foxtrot's impressive footwork, recognizing it as his specialty. Without hesitation, Foxtrot spins around and lands a direct kick to Gu Kang's face. For a brief moment, he thinks he has made a clean hit, but as the dust settles, it becomes clear that Gu Kang remains completely unfazed. With growing fury, Gu Kang grabs Foxtrot and hurls him across the street. Foxtrot crashes hard into a roadside metal pipe, the impact leaving him sprawled on the ground. Foxtrot struggles to move, his body barely responding as he watches Gu Kang. Frustration sets in, he can't keep up. His opponent's strength and durability are far beyond those of a normal human. A troubling thought crosses his mind. Could Gu Kang be an enhanced being just like Alpha? Gu Kang grabs Foxtrot by the head, lifting him effortlessly. Now that he's weakened, Gu Kang demands answers. He wants to know where the masked one is and why Foxtrot is here in his place. Foxtrot, despite his state, responds with a question of his own, pointing out that Gu Kang's original target was supposed to be the administrator. Gu Kang acknowledges that the higher-ups have some plan, though he doesn't particularly care. His interest lies elsewhere. He is searching for someone. Foxtrot reveals that the masked one is no longer in the city. He has already boarded a plane and left the country. Gu Kang refuses to believe it, suspecting deception. But before he can press further, the distant sound of approaching police vehicles fills the air. Realizing time is running out, Gu Kang releases Foxtrot and delivers a message. If the masked one is looking for the administrator, he should come to the old Namsan Tower. This message is meant for him alone. With that, Gu Kang turns to leave. Within moments, police forces arrive in large numbers, soldiers stepping out with guns drawn. However, standing before them is a man clad in a shielded suit, gripping a machine gun. Without hesitation, the officers open fire, but the bullets bounce harmlessly off his bulletproof armor. In retaliation, the man raises his weapon and unleashes a hail of bullets, instantly taking down several soldiers. Those who survive scramble for cover behind armored vehicles. A nearby ally calls for him to get in the vehicle. As he enters, Gu Kang, already inside, berates him for his reckless rampage. The man dismisses the remark, pointing out that their objective was still achieved. Uninterested in arguing, Gu Kang gives the order. They are returning to the hideout. The next phase of their plan is about to begin. Inside the plane, Alpha and the Esper girl sit quietly. She gazes out the window, lost in thought. Noticing her expression, Alpha questions her somber mood, reminding her that she isn't being sold off. She's simply being sent somewhere safe. She responds with a troubled look, admitting that this is exactly what bothers her. It feels like she's running away while leaving all her past wrongdoings behind. Having done terrible things under Gangxiao's influence, she now departs without taking any responsibility. Alpha asks if she resents him for sending her away. She denies it. He explains that his refusal to accept her help wasn't just because of her age. This isn't something she should throw herself into out of misplaced guilt. Instead, she should stay at the academy, spend time with others her age, and take the opportunity to figure out what she truly wants to do. Before she can respond, Alpha's radio suddenly comes to life. He answers the call. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the pilots confirm that takeoff preparations are complete. One of them moves to seal the cockpit door. But just as he reaches for it, Alpha appears, gripping the door firmly before it can close. The pilot, startled, looks at him in confusion. Addressing Alpha as an enforcer, he hesitantly asks what's going on. Alpha's expression darkens, his voice cold and firm. With a commanding tone, he orders the pilot to shut everything down. At the hospital, Alpha arrives to check on Foxtrot's condition. He turns to the doctor, asking if her injuries are severe. The doctor reassures him that aside from some fractures, she will recover. Acknowledging this, Alpha thanks him and then asks for a moment alone. Foxtrot, still weak, informs Alpha that the attackers have taken the administrator hostage. Their demand is clear. Alpha must come alone. Apologizing, she admits that they were too strong for her to handle. Alpha remains unimpressed, dismissing her excuse. Enforcers always face strong opponents, and she was simply lacking. He had expected her to improve, but she still remains unfit for the role. His words sting, and Foxtrot can't hide her disappointment. Shifting focus, Alpha demands details about the attackers. Foxtrot identifies them as Gangchial's elite members. Their leader, in particular, was far stronger than she had anticipated. His strength felt almost superhuman, comparable to Alpha's own abilities. Alpha immediately rejects the idea, calling it impossible. Still uncertain, Foxtrot insists that he was stronger than anyone she had ever encountered. Before she lost the fight, she managed to learn their location, the old Namsen Tower. Hearing this, Alpha turns to leave, acknowledging the information and instructing her to rest. Before he exits, Foxtrot warns him to be careful. There's something strange about the leader. He was specifically looking for Alpha. She wonders if there's a deeper connection between them. Alpha brushes it off, calling it just the usual bad blood before walking out. Stepping outside, he contemplates the situation. Since the enemy wants him alone, he decides against informing headquarters about the location. Just then, the Esper girl appears. Without hesitation, Alpha instructs her to stay at the government office. She opens her mouth, about to insist on accompanying him, but then she remembers Alpha's earlier words. His refusal wasn't just because she was too young, but because this wasn't a fight she should involve herself in out of misplaced guilt. Realizing this, she remains silent. Alpha gives her one last glance before heading off on his own. Alpha arrives at the administrator's office and briefs the director on the situation. Upon hearing the report, the director comments on the failure of their newly assigned enforcer. Chief Allen, the head of enforcement, steps in, expressing frustration. Someone must take responsibility for this failure. The consequences are evident. Alpha, unimpressed, challenges the accusation. If blame is to be assigned, then who is truly responsible? He points out that Foxtrot was personally chosen for the mission. Sending a rookie into such a dangerous situation was reckless. Wouldn't Delta or Sierra have been more suitable? Even with the urgency in District 7, there should have been limits to such decisions. Allen, offended, asserts his authority as the commander of the enforcers, warning Alpha about his tone. Alpha remains firm, reminding him that being a commander comes with responsibility. If Allen holds a bureaucratic position instead of being on the field himself, then the least he can do is handle his duties properly. Before the tension escalates further, the director intervenes, putting an end to the argument. If blame is to be placed, then he himself is also responsible, as he gave the final approval. However, assigning responsibility can wait. The priority is resolving the crisis at hand. At this moment, Executive Director Marvin interjects with a cold question. Do they truly need to rescue Administrator Amber? There are plenty of other capable personnel who can replace her. In fact, he was surprised she was selected in the first place. Alpha doesn't hold back, calling the statement utter nonsense. Having worked with Amber, he knows her value firsthand. Her quick judgment, execution skills, and leadership were instrumental in suppressing the recent police rebellion. Failing to recognize her importance and discarding her would be equivalent to throwing away the credibility of the world government itself. The director acknowledges Alpha's point, explaining that he personally chose Amber because he saw her hidden potential. However, despite everything Alpha has contributed, his manner of speaking to superiors remains too harsh. Realizing the situation, Alpha offers an apology. Allen and Marvin exchange glances, unimpressed. Was that truly an apology? The director, unfazed, turns to them and questions their hesitation. If he apologized, shouldn't they accept it? Left with no choice, both reluctantly acknowledge the apology. With the conflict settled, the director makes it official. Alpha is now assigned to the mission to rescue Administrator Amber. He is given full control over the operation, and they ask what support he requires. Alpha refuses any assistance. He will handle everything within Seoul. Their focus should remain on District 7. The operation will proceed as it always has. The scene shifts to the leader of Unit 3 within the Gangchial gang, who is repeatedly trying to call Gu Kang. Frustration builds as Gu Kang ignores the calls, leaving the team leader increasingly irritated. Finally, Gu Kang answers, but the team leader immediately erupts in anger. He demands to know if Gu Kang has lost his mind, yelling that if the administrator has been captured, He should have been brought in immediately. The leader warns that delaying any further could lead to the entire team facing the chairman's wrath. Unbothered by the outburst, Gu Kang dismisses the concern, reminding the leader that he was the one who ordered him to capture Gas Mask. Ever since that figure appeared, chaos has followed. He argues that the real threat isn't the administrator but the enforcer wearing the gas mask. His tone is sharp as he questions whether the leader truly fails to see that. The team leader, growing more furious, demands to know who Gu Kang thinks he is to make such decisions independently. He reminds him that the chairman's orders take precedence over everything. Gu Kang, uninterested in further discussion, brushes him off, stating that he is busy and will talk later. Without waiting for a response, he abruptly ends the call. The team leader, now seething, barely has time to react before his bodyguard approaches, informing him that the chairman wants to see him. Meanwhile, Gu Kang turns his attention to Amber. He questions whether she truly believes the enforcer will come to rescue her. He warns that if the world government decides she isn't worth saving, she will have no hope left. Without their intervention, he would have no reason to keep her alive. Amber remains silent, offering no response. One of Gu Kang's men steps forward, suggesting they rough her up a bit, believing she might have information about the gas mask-wearing enforcer. Gu Kang immediately shuts down the idea. He explains that the enforcer's information is highly classified even within the world government. Torturing a local administrator will not yield any useful details. Instead, he instructs his men to prepare themselves. They will hold their position at the tower and wait for the enforcer to arrive. As the situation unfolds, Amber finds herself lost in thought. She realizes that everything happening is a trap meant for Alpha. If he attempts to save her, he will be walking directly into their hands. The weight of her helplessness sinks in. There is nothing she can do. At Namsan Cable Car Station, a terrorist receives orders and quickly relays them to his companion. They have been instructed to head up to Namsan Tower, but are told not to use the cable car, as it is too old and unsafe. His companion scoffs, recalling that after the nuclear war, the cable car was operational for a while, but had been abandoned for years. He expresses frustration at having to walk all the way up. The first man remains firm, reminding him that orders are orders and that he should stop complaining. The second man mocks him, sarcastically asking if he has suddenly turned into a law-abiding citizen. Before the argument escalates further, another man rushes toward them in a panic, shouting for them to start up the cable car immediately. Confused by his desperation, the first man questions why he is so frantic. As they turn to look behind him, their confusion quickly turns into fear. Alpha is right on his heels. Panic sets in and they scramble into the cable car, rushing to start it. Once inside, they take a moment to catch their breath, believing they are safe. However, Alpha delivers a powerful punch from the outside, shattering the glass. The force of his strike sends one of the terrorists flying backward. The others barely have time to react before they prepare to fire their guns at him. Before they can pull the trigger, Alpha leaps inside and takes them down one by one. One terrorist manages to fire at him with a pistol, but Alpha skillfully dodges the attack and retaliates with his own gun, taking him out. Another terrorist attempts a surprise attack from above, wielding a sword. Alpha swiftly counters and sends him crashing out of the cable car. At that moment, the cable's structure begins to give way, causing Alpha to momentarily hesitate. Meanwhile, on the ground below, a young boy is busy catching insects, unaware of the chaos above. Suddenly, the cable car comes crashing down right behind him. He turns, staring in shock at the wreckage. Just then, Alpha forcefully kicks open the cable car door and steps out. Stretching his sore body, he assesses his progress, estimating that he is about halfway to his destination. Before leaving, he glances at the boy and advises him to stay out of this and go home. With that, he moves forward. Meanwhile, at Namsan Tower's first floor, a group of guards urgently report to a superior that they have lost contact with the perimeter team. They also mention hearing gunfire. The man receiving the report is Hyung Min, a member of the elite unit. Realizing the situation, he immediately issues orders. He confirms that the intruder has arrived and instructs his men to set up booby traps in the forest. An ambush must be prepared. They have to take Alpha down before he reaches the tower. Alpha sprinted towards the tower, but a group of guards quickly spotted him. Without hesitation, they opened fire, yet the bullets had no effect. Taking cover behind a tree, Alpha remained hidden as the relentless gunfire tore through the bark. Peeking out briefly, he aimed his gun and swiftly took down one of the guards. Moving methodically, he continued this tactic, eliminating the remaining enemies one by one. Meanwhile, Hyung-min and his men were still searching for Alpha. Confidently, he thought to himself that everything was proceeding according to plan. Just then, one of his subordinates informed him that Alpha was moving exactly as predicted. Hearing this, Hyung-min smirked and ordered his men to keep pushing Alpha forward, believing that once he was driven into their designated trap, the fight would be over. Elsewhere, another enemy spotted Alpha running and immediately fired at him. Alpha quickly took cover behind another tree, dropping to the ground to return fire. As he engaged the enemies ahead, an attacker suddenly lunged at him from behind with a sword. Reacting swiftly, Alpha dodged the strike just in time. The enemy attempted another powerful slash, but before he could land the blow, Alpha delivered a forceful kick to his stomach, sending him flying backward. Before the attacker could recover, Alpha fired multiple shots, eliminating him instantly. Rising to his feet, Alpha assessed the situation, realizing that he was now surrounded. It was clear that someone was coordinating the attack. Determined, he decided to break through the weakest point in a single decisive strike. Acting on this plan, he swiftly took down two more enemies and attempted to escape. However, as he moved forward, his foot snagged on a thin wire, a hidden trap. The moment he triggered it, a grenade exploded nearby, sending him tumbling through the air. Landing hard on the ground, he quickly processed what had just happened. If he hadn't reacted in time, his upper body would have been obliterated. The realization struck him. This entire area was a minefield. The explosion alerted a nearby enemy, who rushed toward the scene. Without hesitation, Alpha fired and took him down. As he surveyed the area, he muttered to himself, recognizing that someone had deliberately lured him into this spot. Frustration flickered across his face as he acknowledged the intelligence behind these carefully placed traps. The sound of the explosion drew more enemies closer. Concealing himself behind another tree, Alpha expertly took down one guard, then quickly aimed at another and fired. However, before he could proceed further, a third enemy spotted him and opened fire. In response, Alpha lunged forward and delivered a powerful kick to the enemy's stomach, sending him flying into another hidden booby trap. The moment the enemy hit the ground, another violent explosion erupted. Meanwhile, Hyung-min, growing increasingly frustrated, scolded his men. He demanded to know why they had still not captured Alpha and questioned the meaning behind the constant explosions. His subordinates, uncertain themselves, struggled to provide an answer. Just then, another explosion sounded nearby, much closer than before. Realizing that Alpha was approaching, Hyung-min's expression hardened. Suddenly, a body was flung through the air, landing near them with a heavy thud. Standing over the fallen enemy, Alpha pressed his foot down on him and smirked. Looking directly at Hyung-min and his men, he spoke in a cold, taunting voice. He had found them by accident. But now he was certain. The one responsible for all these cute little traps was standing right in front of him. Hyung-min stood frozen as Alpha appeared before him. Panic took over, and without wasting a second, he ordered his men to open fire. Bullets rained down on Alpha, but he remained unfazed. Raising his gun, he fired a single shot, taking down one of the attackers instantly. Without hesitation, he reloaded and fired again, eliminating another. One of Hyung-min's men lunged at Alpha, weapon in hand. In the heat of the moment, Alpha misfired but quickly recovered, dodging the incoming attack. Wasting no time, he reloaded and shot the attacker dead. As the last of his men fell, Alpha turned to Hyung-min, his voice calm yet menacing. He pointed out that all his men were down and taunted him, offering a choice: fight till the end or accept death quietly. Fear gripped Hyung-min as he realized his dire situation. Without a second thought, he turned and ran. Alpha raised his gun, aiming directly at him, but as he pulled the trigger, the gun clicked empty. With a smirk, he acknowledged the unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, Hyung-min sprinted toward the forest, glancing back to see Alpha approaching with a hoe in hand. With a swift motion, Alpha hurled the hoe at him, but just in time, Hyung-min stumbled, narrowly avoiding the attack. Watching this, Alpha scoffed at his luck. Alpha continued walking toward him, mocking his cowardice. He remarked that if Hyung-min had fought till the end, he would have at least retained some dignity. But Hyung-min, still desperate, pressed a hidden button. A sudden explosion engulfed Alpha, sending a shockwave through the area. Hyung-min let out a triumphant laugh, convinced that the monster was finally dead. As the smoke cleared, his expression shifted from confidence to terror. Alpha stood there, barely affected by the blast. He acknowledged Hyung-min's attempt to set a trap, but pointed out that the explosives were too weak to make a difference. If he had truly wanted to take him down, he should have prepared something stronger. Fear and desperation took over Hyung-min as he shakily raised his gun and shouted, calling Alpha a monster. He fired at him, but Alpha blocked the bullets with his forearms, closing the distance in an instant. With a single, powerful punch, he sent Hyung-min staggering backward. As he struggled to stay on his feet, Alpha pointed out that the path he was heading toward led straight off a cliff. Before he could react, Hyung-min lost his balance and plummeted over the edge. Alpha watched him disappear into the depths below, remarking on the bizarre turn of events. He considered going down to confirm his death, but decided against it. There were more important matters to attend to. With that, he turned and walked away, calling Hyung-min a lucky man for surviving this long. Meanwhile, on the other side, Gu Kang informed Victor that Hyung-min was gone. This meant Alpha would soon breach the tower. Understanding the situation, Victor laughed confidently, assuring Gu Kang that Alpha would never make it past the third floor. Never.